Ladies and gentlemen, in the fast-paced world we live in today, it's easy to lose sight of what truly matters. Our attention is constantly pulled in countless directions, and we find ourselves juggling responsibilities, desires, and distractions. But amidst all of this, there is one principle that remains constant and true. Put God first. When we make God the first priority in our lives, everything else falls into place. Our personal struggles, our dreams, our goals, they all find their purpose and direction when we start by seeking Him. To put God first is to understand that He is the source of all wisdom, all provision, and all strength. It is to acknowledge that He is the one who holds our future, and that by entrusting our lives into His hands we can have peace, knowing we are walking the path He has set for us. God's promises are steadfast. When we put God first, He promises to provide for us. We may not always know how or when, but we can rest in the assurance that He is faithful. His word reminds us that when we seek Him above all else, He will take care of our needs. Matthew 6:33. In our pursuit of success and happiness, we can sometimes forget that our deepest desires are fulfilled in God alone. When we place Him at the center of our lives, we begin to see that everything else, the material possessions, the accolades, and the fleeting joys, pale in comparison to the everlasting peace and purpose that only He can provide. To put God first is to live with a kingdom mindset in a world that encourages us to chase after wealth, status, and success. Putting God first means shifting our focus from earthly desires to eternal truths. It's not about what we can accumulate in this life, but about how we align our lives with God's will and His plans for us. When our hearts are set on His kingdom, we begin to see success not in the way the world sees it, but through His eyes, as an opportunity to glorify Him, to serve others, and to advance His purposes in the world. Faith and trust are at the core of putting God first. We don't always know the way ahead. We don't always understand why things happen the way they do, but when we trust God, when we place our full confidence in His plan for us, we are able to navigate life's uncertainties with hope. It takes faith to surrender control, to admit that we can't do it all on our own, and to trust that God's plans for us are good and filled with hope. Jeremiah 29:11. Finally, putting God first doesn't just change our own lives, it transforms our relationships and the communities we are part of. When we prioritize God, we are filled with His love, and that love spills over into our relationships. We become more patient, more kind, and more forgiving. We understand that we are called to love others as He has loved us, and that means we see the value and worth in every person. As a community, when we all put God first, we build each other up, supporting one another in our shared mission to serve and glorify Him. So today I encourage you, put God first. Let Him be the beginning and the end of all you do. Let Him lead you, guide you, and sustain you. In doing so, you will discover a life that is richer than anything this world can offer, a life filled with purpose, peace, and joy that only He can provide. In a world that constantly demands our attention and energy, it is easy to become overwhelmed by the hustle and bustle of daily life. Whether it's our careers, family obligations, or the pursuit of personal ambitions, we often find ourselves giving priority to everything but our faith. Yet the most important decision we can make each day is to place God first in everything we do. This means that our thoughts, actions, and desires must be aligned with His will, allowing Him to guide and shape every aspect of our lives. When we choose to put God first, we are making a conscious decision to acknowledge His sovereignty and trust in His guidance. It is recognizing that without Him, we are incomplete, and that every success, every challenge, and every joy is ultimately a gift from Him. Putting God first doesn't just mean attending church or praying at the start of the day. It's about making Him the center of our decisions, relationships, and priorities. It's about seeking His wisdom in every moment, whether we're faced with big choices or navigating everyday circumstances. Prioritizing God first in our lives allows us to find direction and clarity. Life often feels like a series of random events, but when we commit to putting God at the forefront of our hearts and minds, we begin to see a pattern, a greater purpose. Every challenge becomes an opportunity for growth, and every triumph becomes a reminder of His grace. We start to trust in His timing, understanding that even when things don't go as we expect, He is working all things together for our good. This commitment to God also brings peace. In a world full of uncertainty, we can rest in the knowledge that He is in control and that no matter what happens, we are never alone. When we prioritize God, we are choosing peace over stress, trust over anxiety, and hope over fear. His presence provides us with a firm foundation upon which to stand, regardless of the circumstances we face. Ultimately, putting God first in our lives leads to spiritual growth. As we make space for Him, as we place Him at the center of our priorities, we deepen our relationship with Him. We begin to hear His voice more clearly, and His presence becomes a constant source of comfort and guidance. With God first, we become more aligned with His purposes, and our lives take on a deeper meaning, one that transcends the temporary struggles we may face. By making God the first priority, we open ourselves up to the blessings and peace He longs to give us. It is in putting Him first that we truly find fulfillment, purpose, and joy. When we put God first in our lives, we are not only acknowledging His sovereignty, but we are also trusting in His promises. God promises to provide for His people, to guide them through life's challenges, and to meet their needs, both spiritual and material. The assurance that God will provide is one of the greatest gifts we can receive. It allows us to live with confidence, knowing that we are never truly alone in our struggles, and that we don't have to carry the weight of the world on our own shoulders. God's provision is not just about meeting our physical needs. It extends to our emotional, mental, and spiritual well-being as well. We may often find ourselves anxious about the future, wondering how we will handle the next step or whether we will have what it takes to overcome obstacles. But when we trust that God is already ahead of us, guiding our path, we can let go of that anxiety. His provision means that He sees us where we are and knows what we need even before we do. It is a reminder that God, in His infinite wisdom, understands the deeper needs of our hearts, and that He provides in ways we may not always expect, but always in the best way. At times we may question why things don't unfold as we imagine them, or why we face hardship, but even in those moments, God's guidance is evident. His ways are higher than ours, and He knows the beginning from the end. When we put God first, we trust in the truth that His timing is perfect and that every situation is an opportunity for growth, even when it doesn't seem like it. God's provision often comes in unexpected forms, whether through people, opportunities, or moments of quiet reflection. These provisions remind us that God is intimately involved in our lives, orchestrating the events that will lead us toward His greater purpose. Moreover, God's guidance comes through His Word and His Holy Spirit, which lead us into a deeper understanding of His will. As we put God first, we find that His Word becomes a lamp to our feet, guiding us through life's complexities. The decisions we make are not based on our own limited wisdom, but on the infinite wisdom that comes from God. This is a source of incredible peace and confidence. The more we immerse ourselves in His Word and seek His guidance through prayer, the clearer His direction becomes in our life. In a world that often promises quick fixes or shortcuts, putting God first is an act of trust that His ways are better than anything we could come up with on our own. It is a choice to believe that He knows what is best for us even when the path is unclear. And when we trust in His provision and guidance, we are free from the burden of trying to control everything, knowing that God will supply all our needs in His perfect way and time. When we put God first in our lives, we are called to adopt a kingdom mindset, which requires us to shift our focus from the temporary and the fleeting to the eternal and the lasting. The world often encourages us to pursue success, wealth, and status as the ultimate goals in life. It tells us that happiness and fulfillment are found in acquiring more possessions, more recognition, more power. But when we place God at the center of our lives, we begin to understand that true success is not measured by what we accumulate here on earth, but by how we live in alignment with God's will and purpose for us. A kingdom mindset involves understanding that this world is not our ultimate home. Our time here is short, and the things of this world, material possessions, achievements, and accolades, are temporary. When we put God first, we are reminded that the real treasure is not found in the things we can hold in our hands, but in the eternal rewards that come from living a life that honors Him. We begin to see the importance of seeking God's will above our own desires and ambitions. Instead of chasing after things that will eventually fade away, we start to prioritize what has eternal value: love, kindness, service to others, and the advancement of God's kingdom. Living with a kingdom mindset also challenges us to view our success and failures through a different lens. It shifts our perspective on what it means to live a full and meaningful life. Success in the eyes of the world may look like climbing the corporate ladder or attaining wealth, but in the eyes of God, true success is found in faithful obedience to Him and in serving others with humility and compassion. When we put God first, we begin to define success not by what we accomplish, but by how we reflect His love and character to those around us. Our achievements take on a new purpose when they are seen as opportunities to glorify God and bless others, rather than just ways to build our own reputation or legacy. In addition to this, living with a kingdom mindset changes the way we approach our relationships. When we prioritize God, we begin to see people not as obstacles to our own success, but as fellow image bearers of God who deserve our love, respect, and care. We understand that our relationships are opportunities to reflect the love of Christ, whether with family, friends, co-workers, or strangers. By putting God first, we learn to love others sacrificially and to serve them with a heart that seeks their best, just as Christ loved and served us. A kingdom mindset also means living with a sense of purpose that transcends personal gain. We start to see our work, our education, and even our daily routines as ways to participate in the work of God's kingdom on earth. Every moment becomes an opportunity to live out our faith and to make a positive impact in the lives of others. Whether we are teaching, working, or serving in our communities, our actions become part of a greater narrative that is about building God's kingdom rather than simply pursuing our own dreams. When we put God first, our lives are filled with a sense of divine purpose, knowing that everything we do has eternal significance when it is done in His name. Ultimately, adopting a kingdom mindset means living not for the temporary rewards of this world, but for the eternal joy and fulfillment that comes from living in accordance with God's will. It is about seeking His kingdom above all else and understanding that true contentment is found in aligning our hearts and actions with His purposes. By putting God first, we begin to see the world as He sees it, and we begin to live a life that truly reflects His love, grace, and truth. Faith and trust are essential when we choose to put God first in our lives. Trusting God means relinquishing control and acknowledging that we are not capable of navigating life on our own. It requires a deep conviction that God knows what is best for us, even when His ways seem mysterious or different from our own desires. Faith is not just a belief in God's existence, it is an active trust that He will lead us, guide us, and sustain us through every circumstance we face. Putting God first requires us to place our confidence in His plans for us, even when the road ahead is unclear or uncertain. When we trust God fully, we are able to release our anxieties and fears. Life is full of challenges, and it's easy to become overwhelmed by the pressures of work, family, health, and relationships. But faith in God helps us to remember that He is bigger than any of our problems. Trusting Him means we do not have to have all the answers or understand every detail of the journey. We simply need to rely on Him for the strength, wisdom, and direction we need. God does not promise that life will always be easy, but He does promise to walk with us through every trial and to give us the strength to endure. Trusting in God's plans also means recognizing that His timing is perfect, even when we may want things to happen according to our own timeline. Often we find ourselves impatient, wanting immediate results or answers to our prayers. But faith allows us to trust that God's timing is not just about the right outcome, it's also about the right moment. He knows what we need, and He knows when we are ready for it. This can be difficult, especially when we are in the midst of waiting, but it is through these seasons of waiting that our trust in God grows stronger. In the waiting, we learn to rely on Him more deeply, to lean into His promises, and to rest in the truth that He is always faithful. Faith in God also helps us to approach life with a different perspective. It enables us to see challenges as opportunities for growth and transformation rather than as setbacks or obstacles. When we trust God, we understand that even the most difficult circumstances are part of His greater plan for our lives. We learn that hardships are not signs of abandonment, but are often the very experiences that shape us into the people God desires us to be. Whether it's through personal struggles, disappointments, or setbacks, faith allows us to believe that God is using those moments to refine us, strengthen us, and bring us closer to Him. Moreover, placing our trust in God deepens our relationship with Him. Trust is the foundation of any meaningful relationship, and it is no different with God. The more we choose to trust Him, the more we grow in intimacy with Him. As we trust God with the big and small details of our lives, we begin to experience His faithfulness in tangible ways. Our relationship with Him becomes less about what we can control and more about surrendering to His will, knowing that He loves us and is always working on our behalf. In times of uncertainty, trusting God allows us to experience His peace that transcends understanding, knowing that we are in His hands. Ultimately, putting God first is an act of faith, an unwavering belief that He is good, that He is in control, and that His plans for us are filled with hope and promise. The more we trust Him, the more we see His faithfulness in every part of our lives. It is through this trust that we find true peace, knowing that no matter what comes our way, God is with us, leading us every step of the way. Putting God first in our lives has a profound impact on our relationships and the communities we are part of. When we make God the center of our hearts and minds, He transforms the way we interact with others, guiding us to love, serve, and support those around us in ways that reflect His character. The love of God becomes the foundation upon which our relationships are built. Rather than approaching relationships with selfish desires or seeking our own interests, we are called to emulate Christ's selflessness, compassion, and grace in our interactions with others. When God is first, our hearts are open to truly seeing and caring for others. It's easy to become consumed with our own lives, our goals, our schedules, our struggles, but when we prioritize God, He shifts our focus from ourselves to the needs of those around us. We begin to see people not just as individuals we encounter in passing, but as valuable, beloved children of God, worthy of our love and care. This perspective changes the way we respond to people in our families, workplaces, churches, and even in our communities. We begin to see beyond differences, conflicts, or misunderstandings, and instead seek ways to build bridges, offer forgiveness, and demonstrate kindness. In relationships, putting God first helps us develop a deep sense of patience, understanding, and empathy. It is easy to become frustrated or angry with those who hurt us or disappoint us. But when we reflect on God's grace toward us, we are reminded that we too are imperfect. God has forgiven us countless times, and when we truly internalize that grace, it becomes easier to extend it to others. We learn to offer patience and forgiveness just as God offers those to us daily. This ability to forgive and seek reconciliation is one of the most powerful ways we can reflect God's love to the world. Moreover, when we put God first, it strengthens our relationships within the body of Christ. A community of believers who prioritize God above all else becomes a support system that is rooted in love, unity, and shared purpose. Rather than being divided by personal preferences, ego, or pride, we are united in our mission to glorify God and serve others. This shared focus on God leads to a deeper sense of fellowship and connection with one another as we encourage and build each other up in faith. The strength of a Christ-centered community lies in the fact that each individual seeks to serve others and prioritize God's will above their own. This creates a space where people can come together to grow spiritually, pray for one another, and support each other through life's challenges. On a broader scale, when we prioritize God, it has the potential to impact our entire society. As individuals who are committed to loving God and loving others, we become agents of change in our communities. By living out our faith through acts of service, kindness, and justice, we help create environments that reflect God's love and truth. Whether through volunteering, caring for the vulnerable, or advocating for justice, our actions serve as a witness to the transformative power of putting God first. The way we treat others, whether in our homes, workplaces, or beyond, can draw people to God, showing them what it means to live a life marked by compassion, grace, and humility. In the end, putting God first doesn't just change our own lives, it changes the lives of those around us. It deepens our relationships, strengthens our communities, and ultimately reflects the love and light of Christ to a world that desperately needs it. When we make God the center of all we do, we become living examples of His love, kindness, and mercy, drawing others to experience the same life-transforming power that we have received. In conclusion, placing God first in our lives is not just a principle, it is a life-transforming decision that shapes every aspect of our existence. When we prioritize God, we find direction, purpose, and peace that surpass anything this world can offer. His provision and guidance lead us through life's uncertainties, while our faith and trust in Him help us navigate every trial and triumph with hope. A kingdom mindset shifts our focus from temporary pursuits to eternal values, helping us live with a greater sense of purpose and perspective. As we put God first, our relationships are transformed, reflecting His love, grace, and forgiveness to those around us. The beauty of putting God first is that it doesn't just impact us individually, it has a ripple effect, influencing our families, communities, and the world. By living a life centered on Him, we become vessels of His love and instruments of change in a world that desperately needs both. Let us remember that when we place God at the center of our lives, everything else aligns. His promises are true, His ways are perfect, and His love for us is unwavering. May we continually choose to put God first, trusting that as we do, He will lead us into a life full of His blessings, peace, and eternal joy. Thank you.